Yeah, happy Thursday, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back for another episode of Emotional Health Thursdays, Self-Care for Black Girls. It's a new month, it's February. And, we all know that February is a month of love. And so we wanted to stay on theme with this month and talk about an aspect of love, which is around self-love and learning not to settle or how not to settle in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I hope you've all felt extra loved throughout this month and have gotten to celebrate your love not only with your romantic partners, but also with your friends and with your family and with yourselves. And we'll jump right into today's topic. Before we even get there, have you ever felt like you were settling in a relationship?
Absolutely. Yes, yes. How about you?
Well, yes. But then, okay, the second question is, if so, was it something that you were aware of during the relationship or did people bring it up to you?
During the relationship, I don't think I would have named it settling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and at the same time, I think maybe only one person, like maybe my sister, had brought this to my attention. Like, you could do better, right? But everyone else was just like so happy for me. But I'm sure we'll get into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. So like, yes, but also like no one said it directly. My sister would tell me like, "Oh, I think you could do better."
Always
a sister. And then I did have a friend, like one of my best friends. She'd always like, you don't have to be there if you don't want to. She'd steadily say things like, "Oh, I hope you don't feel like this is all you can get. I hope you know that you can get someone who meets all your needs." And I just be like, "Yeah, girl, I know. Like, I'm not." I was like, "Yeah, girl, I'm not settling. Like, yeah, he meets the needs that I need to be met."
Right, exactly. The ones that need to be met right now. You're meeting them.
But then you look back, you're like, maybe I was compromising a bit too much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I hope as you're even like hearing this, I hope you think about your own relationships, even from the past or present, and think like, are there things that you are compromising on that maybe you subconsciously feel like you could never find someone who could meet those needs? And what does that mean for staying in that relationship? Okay, so first and foremost, let's define settling in relationships. Settling in a relationship means staying in a situation that doesn't fully align with your needs, values, or desires, often out of fear, comfort, or the belief that you won't find anything better. Doesn't feel good to hear that. It can look like one, ignoring red flags because you don't want to start over.
Sheesh.
And this one, I've heard someone say, like, the grass isn't always greener.
Well, there's problems everywhere. No relationship is perfect. And while that is true, there are just certain things that I'm sure we'll get into that it's just,
no, you shouldn't be there.
No. And I also think this is also like an age sort of a situation, or it's like situational around your age, because I feel like for my right age, which is older than your right age, a lot of women within like my age group, it is sort of that like, I just don't want to start over.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I just don't want to start over. It's not even necessarily they don't feel like, or they don't see the signs. It's like, I just don't want to start over.
Like we're here already.
Yeah.
And then also when you think about it, with like age is important because if you're like if you're in like early 30s, like mid 30s, you start to feel like, okay, like if you want to have kids,
absolutely,
you're now being called geriatric for
absolutely. Yeah.
And then like if you want to marry, you have expectations of when you want to be married by. And now it feels like if I leave this person, I have to start fresh and I'm gonna run out of time for having these other life, takes that I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
And then low key, even like I'm 25. And this is the age where people start to also feel like I need to settle down. Because if I wait, next thing you know, I'm 30, next thing you know. So the pressure, unfortunately, just follows us from a very young age.
Yeah.
But we'll talk more about that as well. Settling can also look like feeling emotionally unfulfilled by convincing yourself it's good enough. Third, it can look like compromising on your core values to keep the peace, right? If you try to shake things up or advocate for yourself, he's gonna be angry or she's gonna be angry.
Mm-hmm.
And so you stay. And what does that mean for your own peace of mind?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Fourth, it can also look like staying out of fear. And this is fear of being alone, fear of change, or fear of not finding another connection, like you were saying.
And I think if you are in a relationship and when you see these like dating shows or you hear these horror stories of dating, you're just like, let's just say like there's pee in the dating pool and nobody wants to get in there. So I definitely can understand and empathize with someone who's like, I mean, he ain't all that bad or she ain't all that bad. Like, they're not all that bad.
Yeah. It can always be worse.
It can always be worse.
Yeah. And then the whole time you're like slowly getting fed up by what it is because you're like, this is just not what I want.
Right.
And lastly, settling can also look like losing your sense of self by constantly prioritizing the relationship over your own well-being.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, these are all the examples. And if these are resonating with you from either past or current relationships, then stay tuned. Because we're going to go through tips on how to leave, these relationships or even try to advocate for yourself more if you want to stay in them. Okay, so settling doesn't always mean that the relationship is quote unquote bad, but it does mean that you're accepting less than what you truly deserve or desire. A fulfilling relationship should challenge you, support your growth, and make you feel valued, not just comfortable.
I love that. Like, I absolutely love that because I think when we hear of settling, sometimes the picture that comes to mind is like there's a person who like they're just being treated maybe horribly and they're just staying. But like you just described, that's not true. And I think that's when sometimes it's even easier to settle because you're like, well, I mean, they're faithful. We have we like some of the same things. They're not always that bad. I can look at them long enough. The sex may be okay. Like everything is pretty much mediocre or like basic, and but it's like it's cool. Like there's no real waves within it. And I think some of that comes from but that's not always a good thing because like you described, like fulfilling relationships should challenge your growth. They should challenge you as a person and they should be fulfilling. So if you're just like, somebody asks you about your relationship, you're like, it's going all right. Good.
Or like you're even clapping like, don't ask me about that. Like
right. Or it's like, oh, we don't gotta talk about them. Like we don't even have to talk about them.
Yeah.
But I think like that's the thing that makes settling so hard for some people to really, at least for me, it was that way as well.
Same.
Because I mean, this person was fine. Like it was cool. But when it came to some of the other types of intimacies, like intellectual intimacy, like some of these things that I knew was important to me.
Yeah.
But I was like, I mean, if I never am intellectually stimulated again, will I live? Sure. And it's like, why, like, I shouldn't have to choose. That's not something that you should have to choose. Now, this person, like you said, willing to work on something, sure, but if you've come to them with that, it's like, I just don't have the capacity to do that, then, yeah.
Then you gotta go. Also, I know, like, for my situation, it was like, he was just too busy. Like, he was always doing something. And I was just like, I love, like, someone that I can spend time with. We can go on adventures with. Like, I can't have this. Yes, I can have a separate life, but also I want you to come into my world. And he was just always so busy. And that's when my friend would tell me, like, you can meet someone who can do these things with you. Like, there is a guy out there who will have time for you. Yeah. I'm not settling. Like, he's going to get better again. Like, he's working on it. I'm talking to him about it. And he said that he would, but it just wouldn't get better. And so, like you said, like, I had to then decipher between what he was telling me versus what he was actually showing me. Yeah. Which was like he didn't have the capacity to give me that time. And that was me having to then walk away because I would be settling if I accepted that. And I wasn't really fulfilled deep down.
And that's hard. Yeah. Like, that's hard to, like, walk away or like choose you when you feel like, I mean, that ain't that bad. Or it's like he's busy with a call.
But
Like
he's
busy with a,
and
busy
he's
with
busy,
like
but he's loyal. And
right.
he's busy, but he's
Right.
like, oh boy. You can have it all.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought about something else too to what you just said in terms of, yeah, like it doesn't have to be a bad situation for you to walk away. And I've also heard women who make excuses or they then feel bad, like, oh, maybe I'm asking for too much.
Right. Oh,
or
yes.
maybe I'm being superficial.
Absolutely.
And, right? Like for girls who want to be taken on dates, and let's say the guy isn't taking them on these dates, but they are, I guess, quote unquote, a good partner. Otherwise, they would also say, oh, maybe I don't need the roses. Maybe I don't need like him to take me to restaurants. But if you want that, and that would make you feel desired in a relationship, you're not superficial for seeking that. Yeah.
I remember it was a basketball player, so I forget her name. But she had talked about like wanting the verbal like affirmation or like attention from Steph Curry's.
It was Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Ayesha
Curry, yeah.
I understood your girl.
Yes, me too. Like wanting, and then people like jumped on her. And I just feel like, well, that's not a hard ask. Like if we are dedicated to one another, we are locked in. Receiving compliments from other people, that is completely innocent. That's fine. But it's like that one person that I'm getting dressed for, or like I'm getting dressed for me, but the one person that I really want to hear a compliment from, if it's just like, I mean, will you hear compliments all day? No.
Oh, is that what she was saying?
I think she was saying like she wants to have the compliments. I think even from other people, like it's not necessarily a horrible thing, and it's not.
It's not. Who doesn't want that?
It's not, and we're human, like,
right? And then when you feel like you're living in the shadow of your husband, of course you want that. You want to be seen as well. Like it made sense, and it does eat at you as well when you start to feel like, well, maybe like I'm just like on the sidelines. I'm not even being seen anymore. Am I even valued in this relationship? Like, yeah, it's all valid.
Yeah. And we see this even within seasons of relationships, even in good, like even in like well-rounded relationships, there are seasons within those relationships where if you're not actively working to maintain or to regain these sort of these things, then it can become settling. Like there's roommate syndrome within relationships, and it's like, then your relationship gets to the season where it's not even what it used to be, and then do you just settle for that and say, well, I mean, we had a great first 5 years, so yeah, and maybe it'll get better. So I'm just like, no.
No. So that leads us right into the tips for how to avoid settling in a relationship to ensure that your needs are met. And we can probably go back and forth. So first we have know your non-negotiables. And this is something that I often work with clients in sessions because a lot of people don't know what their non-negotiables are or their values or their needs. And so it's important to identify your core values, boundaries, and relationship must-haves. Write that list if you need, or even look online for a checklist and see like what your top 10 values are, what your beliefs are, and what your needs are in relationships. And also ask yourself, would I be happy if long-term nothing changed? Like this is what I have to ask myself. If a year later we're still having these same arguments, or he still doesn't have time for me, will I feel like I wasted the past year? And if the answer is yes, that you wouldn't be happy, you'd feel like you wasted that time, or you've just been unhappy for a year, then please walk away now.
Yeah, and I think it's also when you're writing your non-negotiables to really like because you have just like boundaries, right? Like it's not someone else's job to maintain our boundaries, it's ours. It's the same thing for your non-negotiable. Like if you're saying, I want someone who like at least is going to take me on one date a week, and they're like, yep, nope. I'm not doing that. And you're like, well, okay, what about once a month? Like,
now you're compromising on your own needs.
Right. And in a way that is not truly fulfilling. Like compromising to a way, like if you're saying like I'm a romantic person, I really like dates, I could go on a date every day. Like I can go to a nice happy hour probably every day as a date. But realistically speaking, if my partner is like once a week would sound more reasonable, then I could be like, okay, maybe not every day. Once a week is fine. But again, it's knowing if you're hard on no, I need to go somewhere every day, then I mean stick to that. And that's if that's how you feel. But if you do feel like there's some compromise available that you can live with, like I said, that you would see long term, I would still feel fulfilled and happy with once a week date nights, then go for that.
Yeah, definitely. Like knowing, yeah, that's what we call non-negotiables. There are some things that we can compromise on that we still feel satisfied with. But when it feels like it's really going against your core beliefs and values, then you should probably advocate for yourself there. Yeah.
The next one, build self-worth outside of relationships. So the more you value yourself, the less likely you are to settle. Engage in self-care, personal growth, and activities that fulfill you. And that's so true. When you know who you are, what you bring to the table, as someone said, like I am the table, like what you have to offer a relationship, then I do believe it is easier to see when you are not matched, or as I would say, unequally yoked. Like when you are not, that person is not the right fit for you. And I think in my situation, in the relationship where I feel like I was settling, I didn't have that. Like I did not view myself the way the rest of my family and friends viewed me, of like this worth that like, no, you don't have to take that.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to.
Yeah.
And I just sort of viewed like, it's not that, like it's not
right.
Like, so yeah.
Yeah. And this actually made me think about situationships, which I saw this tweet the other day that said, you're in a situationship. Which one of you has low self-worth and which one of you like advocated for the situationship? And I was like, whoa, because you would like to think that a situationship is like both of you are
mutual.
Yeah. But more time, someone came into this wanting a relationship.
Absolutely.
And the other said they're not ready, whether they were avoidant, then the other person just kind of settled for it.
Yeah.
For the sake of I still have access to this person. We're still together technically, right? But he won't put a label, or she won't put a label.
Yeah.
And so it makes you think about self-worth, because it really does boil down to self-worth.
Yeah.
If you believe that you deserve better than this thing, you deserve to be claimed in a relationship,
Yeah.
you deserve to feel that sense of security, you wouldn't accept that person's like lack of commitment.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Maybe not all of us, but some people have been in situationships where they're like, it's not about my self-worth. Like I'm just having fun. I'm just going with the flow, which I've heard a lot. Going with the flow. But you're not going with the flow, because if he was ready to, or she was ready to make it official by tomorrow or today, you would be so happy.
Right.
Right. And so why are you settling again for these terms when that's not what you want?
Yeah.
And same for being in a relationship when you want to get married and the person is just stringing you along and you're just settling for that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. With the promise of
for 10 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is don't ignore red flags. If something feels off, address it instead of brushing it aside, and pay attention to how you feel. Are you genuinely happy, or are you just comfortable? And this word comes up again because more time we're just comfortable, and we're not actually satisfied. And then we ignore these red flags, because it feels like, oh, it could get better down the line, or he or she has said that they want to change, but their actions are not actually aligning with that. That is a red flag, but for some people, they want to see it as a yellow flag. Yeah. They want to suppress it to just go with the flow. But the more you ignore these red flags, the more unhappy you will become in the long run. And that's going to drastically impact the relationships.
Absolutely. Communicate openly and honestly. So express your needs early and clearly. If your needs are consistently unmet, have an honest conversation about whether the relationship is right for you. So I love that about honesty I would even say transparency early in the relationship.
Yeah.
And again, I think that also stems from the root of knowing your self-worth and feeling and having your non-negotiables that you've already come up with. And then once you're just like, yeah, I mean, we're good, but we could be great, or I deserve a great relationship. So let me at least have this conversation or bring to this person's awareness what is happening for me and what I'm feeling. And let's communicate about what needs to be done or what can be done or what the status of our relationship is going to be after this conversation.
And also, when you have the conversation, stand on it. Because a lot of times, you've had that conversation like 10 times.
Yeah.
At least once a month, we're having a conversation.
Right.
It's like, what do you think will change? Like, they made it clear that they're not ready. They're still avoidance or like whatever it is, they're not ready for commitments. And so you don't need to keep having a conversation if they're already telling you or showing you what it is. And then also, like what you said about communicating early enough. Because a lot of times when you look back at relationships where you feel like you settled, the red flags were there from the jump.
Yeah.
And then you ignored them or you just didn't communicate because you didn't want to shake things up.
Yeah.
You said earlier. And that avoidance of having the conversation results in you like, going through this for even longer than you maybe could have if you just snipped it in the bud. And it really does tie to your self-worth because if you come in knowing that I deserve this level of things, you'll be able to really stand firm on that and ask for that moving forward.
Yeah.
And sorry, the last thing that I thought about with this point, what was it? Communicating, expressing your needs. It'll come back to me. The next thing, number 5, is be okay with walking away. There's this fear of being alone, which a lot of us have. And sometimes, it gets in the way of you leaving, but it shouldn't be the reason why you stay. Right? There should be more things that keep you in that relationship than just this fear of leaving or being alone. And also, leaving a relationship that doesn't serve you opens the door for something better.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it feels hard to actually believe that there is better, but it really does free you up, even just for having peace of mind before you're then open to try or experience something new.
And I just want to just highlight that we absolutely get that this can be hard and it can be scary and all of the reasons and the things. And what comes to mind is maybe that person that's in a relationship, maybe in college, and they're coming home and they know they're going to get that question like, oh, do you have a special someone in your life? Or, you're reaching a certain, nice tender age and you have these societal pressures that also come against you making that decision. It doesn't feel like it's a decision that is only for you to make. And we usually carry the burden of all of these other pressures, whether they're familial pressures or societal pressures or religious pressures, and leaving can be scary. But I love what you said about when you do leave, though, you open the door, because I'm just thinking about that person that is like staying with that relationship because it's like, oh, like I have a wedding coming up and I don't want to go alone. And it's like, little did you know, you could have been meeting your husband at that wedding, but because you got little Mr. Bust the Bus over here, it may not happen. So I just feel like it's a scary leap, it's a scary jump, and I don't want this to be confused with not being able to work things out in a relationship or being able to discuss differences and growing together.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying like every time if they have something that you don't disagree with, just leave. Like no, that's not healthy balance. But just to also acknowledge that we know and we understand that some of the pressures for settling are external. And that's something that can definitely persuade your decision, even if you have realized I'm settling.
Which is why it's going to be important to even have support systems who also uplift you rather than add to that pressure. And then I remembered what I was trying to say before, where sometimes you enter something genuinely just wanting to chill, like, you don't have high expectations, you just want to have fun, right? But then down the line, you realize, oh, maybe I do like this person, or maybe I've now suddenly caught feelings and I want something a lot more than what we started off with. It's okay to communicate that when you start to feel that way. And if that person still isn't ready to reciprocate, then you can again walk away or reassess the relationship. So sometimes you really don't come in to this, like, a relationship settling. You actually are like at the same page as that person. But then you change your mind, and we're human, so we can change our minds. What's important still is to validate how we're feeling in those present moments, communicate and advocate for that. And then if you can't get it, then, you know, walking away or changing the dynamic to really protect yourself again.
Also, check in with yourself regularly. Ask yourself, am I growing in this relationship? Do I feel valued, respected, and emotionally fulfilled? And if not, don't be afraid to reassess.
Yeah. And this one is straightforward, checking in regularly. For me, I like to journal a lot when, like, I start to feel a lot of different things, because it helps me actually know what it is that I'm feeling and what's causing it. And that way I get to self-reflect, and then I also know, like, what I should be communicating and when I should be communicating. Is there anything that helps you check in with yourself?
I think to check in with myself, I'm an external processor. I know we talked about this last time, we talked about accountability. So I can go back and rewatch the accountability.
Facts.
But I think really checking in with myself, I honestly do that externally. So having conversations with people and sort of talking about different things within the relationship, speaking with my husband about certain things, and talking about some areas that maybe I'm feeling like, I feel like, you know, we should reassess some of these things, or we can reassess some of these things. That is usually helpful for me.
Nice, yeah. And so you see there's different ways to check in with oneself. You can do it with other people, or even you can do it some private time alone. And so I keep always remembering things for the previous stuff. And so for the previous one, when it said be okay with walking away and having that fear of being alone, there's a big difference between being alone and being lonely.
Absolutely.
Right. For a lot of us, it's like being single feels so scary. It feels like, oh, I have no one. But that's not true, right? Like, cognitively, you actually have your friends, you have your family, and yes, they can't fulfill the same needs that a romantic partner could, but you can still do things to fill yourself worth, to fill your time, and, like, still enjoy things outside of a relationship. And that's where it's important to go back to one of the points that we made before about building things outside of a relationship. Like, what hobbies do you have? What other communities do you have? Like, what interests do you have that aren't only based on the relationship? Because once you have those things around you, you probably wouldn't feel that fear of being alone as strongly. You know that you can be held down by these other communities until you're open and ready to, you know, dive back into the dating world and make these new connections. Right. And last but not least, we have trust that the right relationship won't require you to shrink. The right person will support your growth, respect your needs, and love you for who you truly are.
That's so good.
Second one.
That's good.
So we know a relationship should enhance our lives and not feel like a constant compromise of your happiness. So once you're having these conversations over and over and over and over, then you can reassess, like, am I settling or am I not? At the end of the day, we all deserve to be in a relationship that aligns with our values, fulfill our needs, and allow us to grow in as our authentic selves. Don't let fear or comfort keep you in a space that no longer serves you. Stay true to what you want, communicate openly, and remember, real love won't require you to shrink. Keep choosing yourself, and the right connection will surely follow.
Real love. There's always a song in my head. But I love that, because like, I think that also is how you can do relationship inventory. Like, when you're saying, like, how have I grown with this person? Whether that's emotionally, spiritually, like, physically, what, like, professionally, how have I grown? Because when we're in partnership with people, we would think that, you know, two are better than one. So if I'm in partnership with you and I'm still in the same place I was in, like, forever ago, like when we first met, Like, what's happening? Like, is this a relationship that I need to be in? Even when we talk about platonic relationships with friendships, because I know we talked a lot about romantic friendships, but what about settling for some of your platonic relationships, like some of like your friends? And it's like, we have nothing. We were friends in high school. We have nothing in common anymore.
Facts.
Like, are we still just friends because of the time? So now are we going over like quantity over quality? So like, am I settling for having like, is it more important to me to have 10 friends than to feel like, oh, I only have one or two? When it's like, I mean, the other 8, what do they bring? Like, how are you growing from those relationships? So I just also want to enter that into the chat. Like, how do you do inventory with your platonic relationships to see if you are settling in some of those relationships as well?
Definitely. And that even goes back to comfort. And we become complacent even in our friendships. I remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, I was talking to my friend who like was my high school best friend, basically sister. And I was like, girl, I don't feel like I know you anymore because we grew apart so much. And we were still together. We were still hanging out once in a while, but we weren't having actual conversations to really like grow and strengthen that bond and that relationship. And I had to just tell her, like, we both have other friends, and sometimes those feel like they're even growing stronger than our bond. So what are we doing here? Like, are we just gonna accept this and the friendship is gonna fizzle out? And thankfully, from having that conversation, we got to rebuild our bond. And now it feels like we're both like at a place where we're growing again individually, but also as a unit. And it's important to know that, yeah, those options are there, that you don't have to end the friendship right away. You can actually have the conversation and try to work on it and be more intentional. Whereas if she was like, yeah, girl, like, and it's like, I know this, but I don't care either, and then I might have to dip, you know?
Like, all right, well.
Yeah. But you don't have to accept the friendship for how it is if it's no longer feeling fulfilling. So now our wellness tips.
So Sharea's not here, so drink your water, sis. Get your body moving 30 minutes a day to get your blood flow. Eat a balanced diet and incorporate more vegetables and fruits. Find time for meditation and mindfulness. Find joy, get rest, get some vitamin D, and show yourself some compassion.
That's it. And now we go into the next section, which is what are you grateful for? And as always, we invite you, if you're watching this back on YouTube or on Facebook, to please also comment in the section what you are grateful for so that we can have some kind of rapport with each other. So Alexis, what are you grateful for?
I am grateful for self-reflection, and I am grateful for the ability to, and the courage to have hard conversations, to make sure that I am not settling.
Big, definitely. I am also grateful for the strength to leave relationships that just the strength to leave relationships where I have been settling in the past, because it wasn't easy, right? Like, it took a long time. Sometimes it took a couple months, sometimes it took years, you know? But to get to that point of finally walking away and realizing that you deserve more is a really big step. And so I'm grateful for that and like thinking about this conversation. And now positive affirmations, which we don't have any pre-written.
Right, and Shrea's not here.
Oh,
I am worthy of a fulfilling relationship.
Okay. My needs deserve to be met in my relationships.
I will not shrink for any relationship in my life.
I love that. Communicating openly does not mean that I'm being difficult.
It is never too late to start over.
Big one. There is strength in being alone. It is not my weakness. Last round.
Because I am love, I will always attract the right kind of love.
I think we can end with that. Solid. I will always attract
Yes, I've always
Mhm.
kept that love.
Because love is abundant,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that is all for today's topic. It was a bit of a faster one, but I think it's a hot one, you
Mhm.
know? So I hope you all have some or found some gems from this conversation. Please do continue to have the conversations in the chat. Share with a friend if they're settling. So
Yes, accountability.
Definitely.
Accountability.
And even if you feel like they just benefit from this conversation, please do share with loved ones as well.
Mhm.
And come back here for more chats with us.
Mhm.
Bye.
See ya.